Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, as always, I let to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to Elder Tahar and the rest of the elders that are firmly pushing this truth. And as always, peace and blessings unto the elect. All right, so I came across this video right here. This dude named Shabar. And, man, just to be honest, yeah, he cut this dude from IUIC. And this is exactly why, which I'm going to go into it more detail at the altar. I'm going to be at the altar pretty soon. This is why guys got to stop saying, well, first and foremost, he clearly didn't have no understanding, but this is why guys got to stop saying that the Gentiles in the New Testament are Northern Kingdom. The Gentiles in the New Testament, if you were talking about historical accuracy, all right, the Gentiles in the New Testament are dealing with Israelites of the Southern Kingdom, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Why? Because those Gentiles who Paul was going to, who Paul was teaching, were the Israelites that were Hellenized. And who was there during the Grecian captivity for the most part? Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. So how can the Gentiles in the New Testament be talking about Northern Kingdom? Northern Kingdom was already over here in the Americas. So was Paul going to the Americas to teach the Northern Kingdom? Guys got to stop saying that, man. That is historically incorrect. Let's go ahead and watch this.
Look at this deflection when I asked him who these Gentiles was.
What Gentiles is that?
So the people is the scribes, Pharisees, and Sadducees, and the Gentiles is the other nations.
Unto whom now I...
Well, first and foremost, you said the Gentiles are the other nations in Acts 26 and 17. Which, that's exactly why he should have just let him read the whole entire scripture first before answering.
Sin.
So yeah, and the New Testament is talking about Gentiles being delivered. It's talking about the Northern Kingdom.
Y'all see how he switched it up when he got caught lying?
Which one is it?
The sad part about all this is in Acts chapter 26 and 17, it says, delivering thee from the people and from the Gentiles, unto whom now I send thee, to open their eyes and to turn them from darkness to light. This brother said that these Gentiles was actual Gentiles, and then tried to switch it up and say that was the Northern Kingdom.
Amen. Yeah, which I actually know this guy too. We used to be in Sakari together. He bugged out over the book of Acts. Then he turned into a Christian, basically, an Israelite Christian. I believe he's based out of Chicago now, man. He was in Phoenix. He was in Ohio. I guess he's back in Chicago. But I actually know this guy personally and met him a few times. But yeah, man. So the point is, hey, guys got to stop saying that the Gentiles in the New Testament are the Northern Kingdom. And I'm about to show you how that is incorrect. Right? So this is 2 Kings 17 and verse 1. It says Hosea, which, like I said, I'm going to go into it again, which I went into this before, but just for edification's sake, right? Because you will hear guys say that, yeah, that the Gentiles in the New Testament is the Northern Kingdom, which that can't be right. There it says Hosea reigns over Israel. It says in the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began Hosea, the king of Elah, to reign in Samaria over Israel in 9 years. Now, if you don't know what Samaria is the capital of the Northern Kingdom. All right. So when you read in the scriptures where it talks about Samaria, that's dealing with the Northern Kingdom. And he did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. Hold on, let me go ahead and prove that real quick. I said that Samaria is likened to the Northern Kingdom. Let me just get a precept on that real fast. Isaiah chapter 7, and here we go. Isaiah 7 and verse 9. It says, and the head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is Remaliah's son. If you would not believe, surely ye shall not be established. You see that? So it says the head of Ephraim is Samaria. We know that Ephraim is the leader of the northern kingdom. So back to 2 Kings, the 17th chapter, verse 3. It says, against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and Hosea became his servant and gave him presents. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hosea, for he had sent messengers to So king of Egypt, and brought no present to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. Verse 5. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land, and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. In the 9th year of Hosea, the king of Assyria took Samaria, and carried Israel away into Assyria, and placed them in Halah, and in the harbor by the river of Gozan, and in the city of the Medes. You see that? So you had the northern kingdom taken away from Israel to Assyria. And then what happened after that? We read about this all the time when we prove that the Native Americans, that the northern kingdom are the Israelites, the indigenous Americans. Where am I going now? Let's go to 2nd Ezra 13. Right? This is so simple. This is so simple. I just don't understand why people are still saying this. Because I remember hearing that when I first came in. And when you study, you will clearly see that doesn't make any sense. Because for the most part, who was left in the sight of the Most High, who was left in the land, was Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. They went through the Babylonian captivity, the Medo-Persian captivity, the Grecian captivity, which when the Hellenization started, and then to the Roman captivity. And then post death, burial, and resurrection of Yahushua was when the Gentiles was coming back into the fold of Israel. And those Grecian Israelites or Hellenized Israelites, 9 times out of 10, they were of the southern kingdom. Now, the reason why I say 9 times out of 10 is because you did have a small remnant of the northern kingdom that was left in Jerusalem. A remnant though. A remnant. Not a lot. A remnant. So let's go ahead and go to 2nd Chronicles. Just go ahead to prove that. I believe it's 2nd Chronicles, the 30th chapter. Right, 2nd Chronicles chapter 30. And I'm going to skip right to the point. Like I said, I'm going to go into it more deeper at camp. So 2nd Chronicles chapter 30. Let's see. Trying to get to the point here. Because you had certain tribes of the northern kingdom that had stayed back. 2nd Chronicles, the 30th chapter, that's going into how Hezekiah invited some of the tribes to Jerusalem to keep the Passover. Hence why you have some northern kingdom tribes over there in the west coast of Africa in Nigeria are the Yoruba tribe, which Yoruba, when you go deep into that name, Yoruba goes back to a northern kingdom king, Jeroboam. All right. So this is 2nd Chronicles 30 and verse 18. It says, for a multitude of the people, even many of Ephraim and Manasseh, Issachar and Zebulun, had not cleansed themselves, yet did they eat the Passover, otherwise than it was written. But Hezekiah prayed for them, saying, the good Yahweh pardon everyone. You see that? So you had Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun. They accepted the invitation from Hezekiah to go up to Jerusalem to keep the Passover. Right? Let me read verse 10. It says, so the post passed from city to city through the country of Ephraim and Manasseh, even unto Zebulun. But they laughed them to scorn and mocked them. Nevertheless, diverse of Asher and Manasseh and of Zebulun humbled themselves and came to Jerusalem, and they actually stayed there. And how do we know this? Because you go to Luke, the 2nd chapter, you have a woman named Anna from the tribe of Asher. Right? This is Luke chapter 2 and verse 36. And there was one Anna, a prophetess, the daughter of Phanuel of the tribe of Asher. She was of a great age and had lived with an husband 7 years from her virginity. All right, so you did have a remnant that stayed back in Jerusalem. But for the most part, 99% of the time, those Israelites that Paul was going to in Asia Minor, those were Israelites of the southern kingdom. The vast majority of them was the southern kingdom. So those Israelite foreigners that Paul was going to preach, those so-called Gentiles in the New Testament, those were Jews of the southern kingdom. So let's go back to that 2nd Ezra, the 13th chapter. All right, back to 2nd Ezra 13 verse 40 says, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land at the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanassar the king of Assyria led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. And that over the waters, that has to be by boat, right? Because when you read in the scriptures, every time you see the phrase of over the waters is usually associated with the boat. Verse 41. But they took this counsel among themselves that they would lead the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt, dealing with the 10 tribes, the northern kingdom, that they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. Verse 43, and they entered into Euphrates by the narrow places of the river, for the Most High then shewed signs for them, and held still the flood, till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of 1.5 years, and the same region is called Arsherith. Then dwelt they there until the latter time, and now when they shall begin to come. See that? So this is where they're going to be dwelling at until the latter times. You see that? So how on earth could the Gentiles, like the dude said in Acts 26 and 17, could be the northern kingdom? That absolutely make no sense. Those Gentiles that Paul was preaching to, they were Jews. Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Let's go ahead and grab this real quick. In Revelation, the 12th chapter. This is real simple to understand. Revelation chapter 12 and verse 1, it says, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, which the sun and the moon represents wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And the 12 stars are dealing with who? The 12 tribes of Israel. Right? And that woman is dealing with Israel. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. Why is that? That's because we were suffering oppression under the Roman Empire. Verse 3, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. And his tail, which this is dealing with the Roman Empire, right? Verse 4, and his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven. What is the third part of the stars of heaven? We just read about the head of crown of stars are dealing with the 12 tribes of Israel, right? Now it says, and his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven. What's the third part? The 3 tribes, Judah, Benjamin, Levi, because they were the 3 tribes that were left, because the northern kingdom was already over here in America. So they were suffering oppression under the Romans during the time of the Roman Empire. Like I said, sure, you had remnants of the northern kingdom there, but for the most part, for the vast majority of the people being oppressed during the Roman Empire, during the time of the Grecian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, were the southern kingdom. It says, and it tells you the third part of the stars of heaven, and they cast them to the earth, and the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And you read about that in Matthew the 2nd chapter, when Herod was trying to murder our Lord Yahweh Shai. All right. So this even further proved that that the southern kingdom were the only ones remaining in Jerusalem at the time. So now let's go to this, and this is the book of Nehemiah. Now Nehemiah, if y'all don't know, right, that's why you come to this truth, screaming out Esau is the devil all day. That's not all what the truth consists of. All right, you gotta know your timelines, you gotta know your maps, you gotta know your history. All right, you have to know these things. Now this is Nehemiah. This is the book of Nehemiah, and this is dealing with the Medo-Persian Empire during the time of Ezra, which Ezra and Nehemiah was during the same time period. Ezra and Nehemiah were contemporaries, all right? So they were around at the same time, and they're both Levites, all right? So now let's read in Nehemiah 11. It says, time passes, heads of provinces, right? So if you read it, it's dealing with Judah, Benjamin, Levi. You see that? Now these, Nehemiah 11 and 3. Now these are the chief of the province that dwelt in Jerusalem. But in the cities of Judah dwelt every one in his possession in their cities. To wit, Israel, the priests, and the Levites, and the Nethinims, and the children of Solomon's servants. So you see that? You got the Judites, right? And you got the Levites. Verse 7. And these are the sons of Benjamin. See? That's all you have here. Now let's jump to the last verse. The last verse. Verse 36. And of the Levites were divisions in Judah and in Benjamin. See? Nowhere in this chapter, and you can read the chapter yourself, nowhere in this chapter are you going to see Northern Kingdom. Why is that? How come the heads of the Northern Kingdom wasn't spoken about in this chapter? Because they weren't there. They were already gone. Maybe, I'm not too sure, but probably by this time, they were probably already heading towards America, or maybe still being oppressed under the Assyrians. But more than likely, they were already either here or on their way over here. Period, point blank. So let's go ahead and replay this again. Which, man, this dude from IUIC, man, he needs to stay off Clubhouse and hit the scriptures more.
Man, this is crazy.
And this guy ain't, man, no need to address this. Hey, this dude is clearly bugged out, right? This guy right here is clearly bugged out. No need to even address him.
Look at this deflection when I asked him who these Gentiles was.
What Gentiles is that?
So, okay, so the people is the scribes, Pharisees, and Sadducees, and the Gentiles is the other nations.
Yeah, but first and foremost, he said the Gentiles are the other nations. I don't know, what was he thinking? He should have told him. See, that was a whole tactic, right? Which he fell into. If you're going to debate, you gotta know how to debate, man. Like, you gotta know how to debate if you're going to do that. Which, when you debate, man, there's some like it's real deceptive, you know.
Unto whom now I sin.
So again, the Testament is talking about Gentiles being delivered. It's talking about the Northern Kingdom.
Y'all see how he switched?
Yeah, which he's wrong. All right, he's wrong. All right, the Gentiles in the New Testament is not dealing with the Northern Kingdom. Now, we're out there on the street today, right? And we're, speaking about, yeah, man, how are people like Gentiles? All right, yeah, then you would apply that, right? You would apply that to all of the tribes. But if you take a time machine and go back to the time of Paul, the time of the Acts, they weren't northern kingdom. Matter of fact, let me leave off with this one last scripture just to nail it in the coffin. This is Acts. This is Acts the sixth chapter, right? And let's read it in the NIV, verse 1. Watch this. Acts 6:1. It says, in those days, when the number of disciples were increasing, the Hellenistic Jews, see that? The Hellenistic Jews, see? Among them complained against the Hebraic Jews because their widows were being overlooked in the daily distribution of food. So you see that? The Hellenistic Jews. Which we know when you read the scriptures, the Jews are symbolic for the southern kingdom. Let's type in Jew. I believe the first time it is referenced is in the book of Kings. Yeah, yup. See that? See, let me type in Jew real quick. All right, see that? You see Esther, right? You got Mordecai was of the tribe of Benjamin, right, being called a Jew. But we know that Kings was before that. So let's go back and type in Jews. Right, 2 Kings 16:5 says, then Rezin. This is basically the same thing as Isaiah 7. Yeah, this is the same thing of Isaiah 7. See that? So 2 Kings 16, Isaiah is just, because Isaiah was actually during the time of the kings. All right? You had a lot of prophets on the scene during the time of the kings. So you read Isaiah 7 and 2 Kings 16:5 and 6 is on the same exact thing. It says, then Rezin, king of Syria, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to war, and they besieged Ahaz, but could not overcome him. At that time, Rezin, king of Syria, recovered Elath to Syria, and drave the Jews from Elath, and the Syrians came to Elath and dwelt there unto this day. All right, so you see how this is a separation from the Jews, right, and king of Israel, which that would be the northern kingdom. Right, well, like I said, I'm going deeper at the camp. So, Yahweh Tazah, if you brothers and sisters were edified, Shalom.